Who are we? Where did we come from? Why are we here? These questions have been asked over and over again. Our history, as taught in the books and schools, makes no sense and does not add up at all. But how deep is the lie? And how hidden is the truth? And where exactly is the truth hidden? Maybe we can get a little closer to those answers in this video here. Let me read an excerpt from the Book of Kin from the Ringing Cedars book series by Vladimir Megre. The book series sold tens of millions of copies and has been fought by the mainstream for many years. This is from the chapter A Dormant Civilization, published in 2002. I am a Vedrus, Vladimir. I actually felt a kind of extraordinary sensation within me from the word Anastasia pronounced. It felt like a mild electrical current was running over my whole body, like a pleasant heat wave, as though imparting some kind of news to every cell of my being. And something unusual, it seemed to me, had happened in the space around me too. The word itself meant nothing to me, but for some reason I rose to my feet upon hearing it. I stood there as though trying to remember something. Have your people died out, Anastasia? Or rather, are there just a very few of them left? Where were they settled previously? Our people have not died out, Vladimir. They are dormant. Our people happily thrived on the territories now known as Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, England, Germany, France, India, China, and many other states, both large and small. Up until quite recently, only 5,000 years ago, in the real world, our people were thriving on lands from the Mediterranean and Black Sea to the farthest northern latitudes. We're Asians, Europeans, and Russians, as well as those who recently called themselves Americans. In fact, God people, all from a single Vedrus civilization. During the Vedic Age, mankind reached a level of sensitive knowledge allowing it to create energy images through collective thought. And then it underwent a transition into a new era of existence known as the Image Age. With the help of energy images, created by collective thought, mankind was afforded the opportunity of co-creating in the universe. It could have had the ability to create Earth-like life on other planets, and it would have if it had not committed any mistakes in passing through the Image Age. In the Image Age, however, which lasted for 9,000 years, mistakes were repeatedly made in the co-creation either of a single image or several images simultaneously. A mistake occurred if there remained in the Earth's human society people with insufficient purity of thought, with an insufficient culture of feelings and thoughts. Such mistakes had the effect of obscuring the opportunity to create in the expanses of the universe and let mankind into occultism. The occult age of human life has lasted for 1,000 years now. It began with an intensive degradation of human consciousness. Ultimately, a degradation of consciousness and an insufficient purity of thought, coupled with knowledge and opportunity at the highest level, would always lead mankind to a global disaster. This was repeated many times over billions of Earth years. Now, we are in mankind's occult age, and as always, a disaster of global proportions was supposed to take place. It was supposed to, but the deadline has passed. We have passed the end of the occult millennium. Now it is up to everyone to take stock of their purpose, their essence, and where the mistake was made. We should help each other in mentally retracing the course of our history in the opposite direction and pinpoint the mistake. Then an era of joyous life on the earth will be ushered in, an era such as no one has ever witnessed before in history. The universe is anticipating it with bated breath and great hope. In the meantime, the forces of darkness are alive and prevalent, feverishly trying to control people's minds. But for the first time, they failed to notice the Vedrus' unusual behavior back 5,000 years ago. When an image was born by a perverted consciousness upon the earth, an image which desired to exercise control over everybody, that was when the first war began. It was under the influence of this image that people started killing each other. This happened many times on the earth just before a global disaster. But this time, for the first time, the Vedros civilization did not enter the fray of a non-material plane. Instead, the Vedros fell asleep on their territories, both large and small, switching off a part of their consciousness and feelings. Man's life on the earth seemed to carry on as before. Children were born, houses were built, the decrees of the attackers were obeyed. It seemed as though the Vedros had submitted to the dark forces, but therein lay a great secret. By falling asleep, the Vedros, unconquered, remained alive on all planes of being. And this happy civilization is dormant right to this day and will continue to sleep until those who are awake search out the mistake in the image creation. That same mistake that led the Earth civilization to its present day situation. Once the mistake has been identified with absolute precision, the dormant ones may hear the words of those who are awake and begin to rouse each other out of sleep. Just who thought up this particular move, I cannot say. It is probably someone very close to God. You, as a Vedros yourself, should try to wake up at least a little and take a look at the course of history. Our people went to sleep on various continents. 3,000 years ago they were thriving only on what is now Russian territory. At that time, the age of the dark forces had already come upon the whole earth, and the Vedros continued their happy existence only on the island now known as Russia. They very much needed to hold out another 1,000 years. They had to decide how to convey their knowledge to future generations, figure out what was happening on the earth, and determine how a repetition of the mistake could be avoided in the future. They managed to hold out another 1,500 years on this island. They fended off the attacks, but not on a material plane. The darkness had already taken control of people's minds over the whole earth. The priests placed themselves above God and decided to create their own world of the occult. They had already managed to intoxicate a third of the world. But all the forces of darkness could do no harm to our people on this island that is today called Russia. It was only 1,500 years ago that this last island too fell asleep. The civilization of the earth, the people who knew God, fell asleep in order to awaken to the dawn of a new reality. The forces of darkness supposed that they had succeeded in destroying this people's culture and the aspirations of their soul forever. This is why they are trying so hard to conceal the history of the Russian people from those living on the earth today. In reality, there is much more to the story. In covering up the history of the Russian people, which can serve as a stepping stone into the world of the beautiful, they're actually trying to cover up the joyously living civilization of the earth. Cover up the culture, knowledge, and feeling of knowing God which are inherent in that glad civilization your forebears were a part of. Wait, Anastasia, could you tell me a bit more specifically about this extinct, or as you put it, dormant civilization? Using simpler terms easier to understand, and can you prove the existence of this civilization? I can try using simpler words, but it will be 100 times better if each one tries to visualize it for themselves. But is it possible for everyone to see what happened 10,000 years ago? Yes, it is, only in varying degrees and detail, but everyone can get an overall feeling of it and even see one's forebears and oneself in this joyous world. How can everyone do that? How can I do it, for example? It is all very simple. To start with, Vladimir, try to evaluate and compare events you're familiar with just with your own sense of logic. When questions come up, find your own answers to them. What do you mean by logic? How can one learn about the history of Russia, let's say, by logic? Anyway, you said that our Russian history and culture have been destroyed or hidden from all the people of the earth. But how can I, or anybody else for that matter, verify what you say using logic? Let us try reasoning through this together. I can do a little to help you get in touch with history. Okay then, what needs to be done to start with? To start with, you should answer yourself a question. Which one? A very simple one. Remember, Vladimir, the history textbook you brought for our son is called The History of the Ancient World. There's a chapter in it discussing the history of ancient Rome, Greece, and China. They describe what Egypt was like 5,000 years ago. But nothing is said about what Russia was like during this time. Never mind 5,000 years, Russia's history and culture, even from 1,000 years ago, are kept in the strictest secret. The textbook is written in a Russian language aimed at Russian children, but there is not a word in it about the Russia of only 2,000 years ago. Why? Why, I echoed? Indeed, a most peculiar situation, a Russian textbook on the history of the ancient world and nothing said about Russia itself. Not a word about the history of the Russian people, either during the time of ancient Rome and Egypt or even later. Strange, very strange, as though there were no Russian people living during those times. In trying to recall what I knew of history, I remembered hearing about the existence of the ancient philosophers of Rome, Greece, and China. I never read their works, just heard about them. I also knew that their works were accepted by society as brilliant and outstanding, but I could not recall a single Russian philosopher or poet of that time. Indeed, why? Aware that Anastasia wanted me to try to figure out the answer myself, I said, "Neither I nor anyone else can answer this question, Anastasia. It's a question that's probably not possible to answer." It is possible. Only one must not be lazy in one's logical reasoning. You see, we have come to our first conclusion. The history of the Russian people is unknown not only to the world at large, but to the Russians themselves. Do you agree with this, Vladimir? Well, maybe not entirely unknown. We still have descriptions of what happened 1,000 years ago. The description was written under censorship and with significant distortion. Besides, the commentaries are the same for every historical event. Russia's past millennium, the Christian era, is like a single day of history. We have Christianity in Russia still today, but can you tell me what preceded it? They say that before Christianity, Russia was a heathen land. People worship various gods. But the description is very superficial. There are no writings or even any legends about that period. There are no descriptions either of the political system or of people's way of life. So you have reached conclusion number 2. The Russian people had a different culture then. Now use your logic and tell me under what circumstances do attempts arise to hide or distort history? Well, there's a clear answer to that question. People try to falsify history when it's necessary to show the benefits of following a new order, a new authority, a new ideology. But to completely conceal any trace of it, wow, that's incredible. The incredible happened, Vladimir. It is an incontestable fact. Now tell me something else, and do not slacken in your thinking, please. Did this fact come about all by itself, or is it the result of a deliberate effort on somebody's part? Judging by the fact that people have always burned books when they've wanted to stamp out knowledge or ideology, I would say that someone deliberately stamped out all knowledge about pre-Christian Russian culture too. Who do you think would have done that? Who? Most likely the ones who were imposing a new culture and religion on Russia. One might say that, but possibly there was somebody behind it, somebody controlling the new religion and those who imposed it, somebody with their own agenda. But who? Who can control religion? Tell me. You're still looking for answers from the outside. You're too lazy to search for them within yourself. I can give you an answer, but an outside answer may seem to you incredible. It may provoke a degree of doubt. Everyone can hear the answer within themselves once they have liberated their soul and logic and awakened even a wee bit from sleep. It's not that I'm lazy, it's just that searching for answers within myself will take a lot of time. Better you tell me yourself what you know about history. If I start having doubts, I'll question you further. I shan't just take your story for granted, but I shall verify it by logic both now and later on as you suggest. Let it be as you wish. But I shall merely give you a rough outline of the whole and let everyone try to fill in the details as they perceive them. Today's reality, along with the past and the future, is something that needs to be determined only within oneself, with one's own soul. People have been living on the earth for billions of years. Everything on the earth was created perfect right from the start. Trees, blades of grass, bees, and the whole animal world. There is a direct connection between everything living on the earth and the entire universe. The apex of creation is man. And in the great pristine harmony of all things, man was created harmonious. Man's purpose is to learn about all his surroundings and create perfection in the universe. To create the likeness of the world, of the earth, and other galaxies. and with each new creation of his to add more splendor to earthly creations. The way will open for man to create on other planets when man is able to overcome temptation, when man is able to hold in unity the grand and diverse energies of the universe inherent in himself, and when he does not allow one of them to take precedence over the rest. The day when the whole earth is a paradise garden will mark the opening of the path of creation in the universe. And once man becomes aware of the whole harmony of the earth, he will be able to contribute his own splendor. Man takes it upon himself to take account of his actions once in every million years. Whenever he makes a mistake, whenever he allows one of the many diverse energies he contains to dominate at the expense of the rest, a global catastrophe takes place. Then everything starts again from the beginning. This has happened many times. One of mankind's million-year periods may be divided into 3 ages. First, the Vedic age. Second, the age of the image. And third, the age of the occult. The first age of human society on the earth, the Vedic, lasts 990,000 years. During this age, man lives in paradise like a gladsome child, maturing under parental care. During the Vedic age, God is known to man. All God's feelings are inherent in man, and through them, man is able to obtain any advice he needs directly from God. And if man should suddenly make a mistake, God is free to correct it simply by giving a hint, without disturbing the general harmony or infringing on man's freedom in any way. In the Vedic age, man does not raise questions about how or by whom the world, the universe, the galaxies, along with his marvelous planet called Earth, were created. Everyone is completely aware that everything around, either visible or invisible, has been created by their Father, namely God. The Father is everywhere. All that grows and lives are His living thoughts, His program. And one can use one's own thought to commune with the Father's thoughts, and one can contribute to His program, provided one first understands it in detail. During the Vedic age, man did not bow down before God, nor was there the multitude of religions which sprang up afterward. There was a culture to life. People lived a divine way of life. There were no diseases of the flesh. Feeding and clothing himself in a divine manner, man simply did not think about food and clothing. Thought was otherwise occupied with the excitement of discovery, and no rulers reigned over human society. There were no boundaries marking off states as today. Human society on the earth consisted of happy families. The various continents were inhabited by families. They were all united by their aspiration to create a space of splendor. There were many new discoveries, and each family, upon making a splendid discovery, felt the need to share it with others. Families were formed by the energy of love, and everyone was fully aware that a new family would create one more oasis of splendor on their native planet. There were many, many rituals, holidays, and carnivals among the people of the Vedic age, each imbued with great meaning, sensitivity, and a conscious awareness of the real divine existence on earth. Each ritual served as a grand school and a grand examination for each man that took part in it. An examination in the eyes of others, in the eyes of oneself, and consequently, in the eyes of God.